Welcome back from your brain break. Hopefully that didn't take too long. The second half of this presentation will give us a few more strategies for creating a 90-minute lesson, and also prepare us for our department meetings where we'll be working in groups to complete our first 90-minute lesson for next year. So cooperative learning is going to be important because we can't talk for 90 minutes, and we really are moving to this because we want lessons to be more student-centered, and we want the students to be doing the majority of the work. Now, you've probably heard cooperative learning strategies since you entered the teaching profession or your first education class. But what I want you to think about is the importance that when they're working cooperatively, it's really necessary. Think about the jigsaw for a minute. Jigsaws are often ineffective because, first of all, in a 45-minute period, they often end just after the expert team gets their information and then comes back to the home team and reports out. After all of the students report out to their home team what they learned when they were in that expert group, usually the lesson has to end fairly soon after that, so they do a quick exit ticket and that's done. But the meat of the jigsaw is supposed to happen once the students have gotten back together into their home team and they share that information. That information is supposed to be used to complete a larger product or have the students analyze or evaluate a more strenuous or rigorous question where they need the other information to answer it. So the fault of most cooperative learning in a lot of classes is that we don't make students accountable to have to use the information that they get from each other, which means that the students don't think it's important and then they start to misbehave. So whenever we use cooperative learning, which in a 90-minute class period we should be using some sort every day, students need to have to use the information to do something greater than what they would do on their own. Aside from cooperative learning, we also have the opportunity to use technology, but we need to use it in a way, once again, that's meaningful. So anytime we use technology, it needs to involve problem solving, critical thinking, researching, or reteaching and extending learning. So I'm going to show you a quick video from Buck Lodge Middle School where a math teacher is using digital integration for problem solving.
What are you looking up? You guys had to come up with your own word problems? Okay, so you can research some examples.
Make sure you use your reference strips we made earlier that I can see. I know I do. They were just submitting you this. They're awesome. Charts they created on.
And you're using it Modo?
Yeah, they all turned in the inside and they created these awesome charts for structuring the word problem.
Okay.
And now they're working backwards and making their own.
Okay.
So we went over, for example, here how to break apart using the highlight circles and then organize it.
So you upload a lot of stuff to Modo that they can just go right to?
Yeah, so I uploaded the problems that they created their own chart.
Okay.
So here's one of the charts one of the students made, and now they're working backwards to make their own word problems, reversing the steps.
Okay, and I see a lot of kids like researching some examples of that.
Yeah.
So that's an easier way. Okay.
To get a sense of what kind of problem what they need if they want a negative slope, if they want a negative answer.
Do you use the technology every day?
I say almost every day. I don't know, Tawana, what do you think? Do we use the iPads almost every day? Yeah, I think so.
Right. How do you use it most of the time in your math class?
A lot of it is to get them instant feedback on their practice. So if we're doing a problem, rather than just having one student raise their hand and give the answer and figure out, that way we can see everybody.
Everybody.
We're all getting it right, all getting it wrong. Anonymous questions sometimes.
That they
Make
can,
sure we're all.
and you submit that mostly through Edmodo?
Edmodo, or we like using Socrative.
Socrative. Okay, yeah, I've seen that before.
The program.
Right.
We've got a couple other we've experimented with, but those are probably the two.
Edmodo and Socrative.
Okay, so the Socrative she's describing there is very similar to our BCPS1 test and quizzes feature, but it's another program that allows you to get instant results and give students feedback right away. And you don't always have to use that feedback in an evaluative way. Even in BCPS1, you can have something be not for grade, but it can just give you that information so you can analyze the data. But the point is using technology. In that case, she was using it for students to research as well as for them to solve problems and think critically. So to me, the foundation of all of this, before we can give kids a device, before we can put them into groups, is formative assessment. We have to know what students know and understand what they're thinking. And to do that, you have 5 ways you can analyze work in a way that's not evaluative. You can analyze student work, questioning students so that you can gauge their understanding, listening to class discussions, giving pre-assessments, and of course just teacher observations walking around the room. If you think about the way Danielle Imhoff does this in her art class, she gives students opening drawing activity, then puts a blue or yellow dot on the top of their paper, determining which class assignment they'll get based on their level of readiness. That's both an analysis of student work as well as a pre-assessment. When we look at the questioning and class discussion and observations, I think a great way to do this is just to come up with a simple checklist. So you could print out a blank grading report sheet from BCPS1, write your objective at the top of a page, and just check off yes or no beside each student's name as you're listening to them in their groups, or as you ask questions during class discussions, or as you walk around and look at what they're accomplishing independently. Yes, the student is attaining the objective, no, the student is not. And you can make decisions right in the class period about whether you need to move into small groups or whether you can move on because everybody's getting it, or whether you need to reteach the whole group because the majority of the kids are not getting it. But the point is that has to happen in every class period. 1 or 3 of the 5 of these types of formative assessments should be happening every class period where you're using that information to make decisions. So some formulas, or a formula for quality instruction. First, framing the lesson. So start with those big ideas. It is a great idea to have a bulletin board with the unit standards or ICANN statements. In every class period, relate your objective to where you are in the unit and how it's going to get you and the students to the ultimate goal or that closing product or task that they have to complete, which is evidence that they have accomplished those standards. This will help you plan better because every lesson will need to be related to that culminating event, and it will also help your learner see where you're going. So framing that lesson based in the standards of your unit. Next, plan every lesson to work in the power zone. As teachers, you have to be moving around the room. And if you plan where you're going to be moving around the room, then that means you're planning cooperative learning activities, or you're planning for students to be doing something with the work. The more we move around, the more we're encouraging students to be in charge of the learning, and we're also keeping track of on-task behaviors and reframing issues that could become a discipline problem. Students talk or use behaviors that are not productive when we are farther away from them. So if we're standing in the front of the classroom, the kids in the back, the kids on the sides are the ones that tend to be off task. When you are moving around the classroom, you can mitigate a lot of those problems. But more so, if you plan to move around the classroom, then you're saying, okay, I want kids to be doing the work as opposed to me standing and talking. With that in mind, every time you have to stand and talk for 10 to 15 minutes, you want students to have time to digest that. They don't always know how to do that, so you need to kind of plant seed questions or pre-planned questions that guide student conversations. These questions, of course, are going to be based on the objective. They're also a great opportunity for you to walk around with that checklist I mentioned earlier and have just decide whether or not students are accomplishing the objective or not. This gives you more time in the power zone, which means you have a better learning environment and better classroom management. Now, what we also have to remember is that this is going to be new for our students. So we have to start right away with a PBIS program that is personalized for our classrooms. Start by making a big deal of the small things. If you want your students to be able to move from small group to independent work, praise them when they can get the desk and things in order. Start by reinforcing the work it's going to take to be successful, and personalize your reinforcement for your students and for your own classroom. Joe Bigsby has done a really good job of personalizing the PBIS program in his classroom, even selling wall space to his students for a certain amount of Eagle Bucks so that they can really create their world in his classroom. You want it to be beneficial because our students look to us more for recognition of them as people than for them as content experts, because in middle school you're more concerned about yourself socially and your character as opposed to how good you are in a particular subject. So before we can build up that work habit in the content area, we have to build up their character, and that only comes with a close relationship. Another big piece of the 90-minute period is the opportunity to write critically. Writing, by that I mean that they are writing for the purpose of either organizing, defending or refuting an idea, analyzing, dissecting data, connecting or expanding ideas. This type of writing is essential to students really understanding what they're learning. Give them 5 to 10 minutes each day to write something, whether it's journaling in the beginning of the class as a pre-assessment, whether it's summarizing what they've learned at the end. Give them that opportunity to digest information in a way that really gets them to think. That could be a simple list, a short comparison paragraph. They could have a mind map of the steps it takes to solve a math problem. Whatever it is, it can't be copying, because then they're not the author. It's not their thoughts. They're just writing something down. You want it to be their thoughts because that creates ownership. More writing means that they remember more. It's linked to our reading improving and also having better understanding and owning the learning. So every day incorporating some sort of writing. Now, the goal of this presentation was to give you kind of some strategies and a platform so that you can plan. On April 25th, you're going to be meeting in your content departments to plan a 90-minute lesson. What I want you to do is meet in pairs with your grade level team, content team member. So the 2 7th grade language arts teachers are going to meet together, and they're going to look at the first unit. So what you're going to be doing in August. You need to look at what that's going to be now that you have more time in a lesson but fewer meeting times. So what your job is to pair up lessons that go well together, that can be combined for 90 minutes, remove others that don't really hit at the center of the big ideas of the curriculum, and extend some that are going to help students master the I can statements or standards. Once you do that, take the first lesson and use the strategies from this presentation to create a 90-minute lesson. That means in chunking the lesson into different activities, creating transitions and brain breaks that will help students to refocus, creating different strategies or using different strategies for different types of intelligences. That means using active learning, getting students up and moving around, or tactile learning, and also using technology when necessary. Now, as you are planning this for your supports, all of this information, including the PowerPoint, can be found on the shared drive. So when you go to the shared drive, you want to go to the professional development folder, and then you have block scheduled resources, and you have the PDF I mentioned about the brain breaks. You also have a packet here on creative learning or cooperative learning strategies, and the image that Michelle showed us of how to break down a 90-minute period. There's even a language arts instructional model for the 90-minute period. So as I find materials, I will put this there. As always, please contact me, but I think we'll feel a lot more comfortable once we've planned that first unit and the first lesson to really help us with that 90-minute period. But it really is about good teaching and using that time wisely. So thank you for watching.